Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the Small Business Success Summit. And I kind of look back because we've been joking around over the last couple of interviews about, the content. Is it really just for small business? Because I've got some feedback that what we're teaching here, big businesses aren't doing very well. And so, it's like, are we doing the Big Business Success Summit, the Medium-Sized Business Success Summit, the Skill Set Summit? But no, we are doing hashtag SBSS, the Small Business Success Summit, where we're bringing you a variety of different trainings from a number of different fields and aspects related to small business marketing, because you've already got your Facebook marketing stuff. You've already got your Twitter marketing, and you've already got like your hyper niche programs out there. But to be a successful business online, or excuse me, to be a successful small business, you need more than just online marketing training, right? You need to know how to create budgets. You need to know how to network. You need to know how to plan events and to create internal systems. And that's what we're bringing you on the Small Business Success Summit. My name is Owen Hemsath. I always feel so stupid saying my own name, but I'm Owen Hemsath at thevideospot.net. I'm a video marketing and YouTube growth expert, and I have my own blog at owenhemsath.com where I talk about, just kind of life and being a dad and tech and business and Facebook ads and whatever's on my mind. Today I have an awesome guest, and I'm really excited to have this guest on with me today because we met in sort of a traditional but untraditional way. See, when I want to do a summit, I'm looking for people that I know that are experts, people that I've worked with that are experts, or I will actually go to the web and look for people that are an expert in a given field. I actually met our guest today through a mutual friend, somebody that we both use for editing work. And once I saw her content and YouTube channel, I thought, oh my gosh, she's a pro. She's a total pro at a topic that I know very little about, right? I love to go to events. And I just got back from a 2-day event, but I'm looking at this event that I was just at, and I'm like, I wouldn't even know how to put this thing together. I wouldn't want to. It's not my thing. But I ended up buying, and I knew I was going to, but I also saw 50 other people that bought at this 300-person event. So events are a great way to grow revenue, to grow your culture. And today we have an event planning specialist to talk about how to properly execute, or how to plan and execute an event. So I'm going to turn it over to her to give you a little bit more information. So I want to introduce you guys all to Melanie over at eventplanningblueprint.com. Melanie, are you there?
I am. Thanks for that intro, Owen. It's so great to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited.
Your webcam is working better than mine. Mine's all choppy.
Oh, you're doing all right. You got a little techno moves going on, but that's okay.
So tell us a little bit more. I'm sure there's people in the audience that already know who you are. They've been following you on YouTube. They got your ebook. But for those of us that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got to be where you are today.
Yeah, well, how I got to be where I am today is definitely not the straight line, as any probably small business or medium-sized business or any business owner can relate to. I did this squiggly line of many different industries and trades, but more specifically about the event side of it, I started my event planning business in 2004, and I started working with like international brands like Honda and Home Depot. I've worked with Young Entrepreneurs Organization and a number of others, and also started working with some celebrities and professional athletes. So that's really how I got my name out there, and I really leveraged that because to be honest, when I started, I was really a nobody. I was good at what I did, but nobody knew who I was. So I leveraged all that to build my business, and went on to build or plan events anywhere from small, intimate events with 8 people to festivals with over 30,000 people. So it's been quite a learning process, and it's been a lot of fun. And now what I do is with Event Planning Blueprint, I have event tools and information products that I sell to specifically event planners at this point. However, we do have a new program coming out for small to medium-sized businesses, specifically on how to plan an event for your business. And so we're getting into the small and medium-sized businesses as well now. So that's
now, small businesses that want to do events are either doing them on their own, or
Right.
they're working with event planners, or maybe even that third one, they're working with another small business that plans their own events, right?
Right, yeah, there's a number of different ways that people do it. Small businesses tend to use their assistant to plan the event, who may or may not have experience. Assistants tend to be good because they have what I like to call follow-through. They are the people who are really good at seeing things through to the end, whereas most entrepreneurs, and this doesn't go for everybody, but most entrepreneurs have the vision, they have the idea, but they don't want to do the details. So that's
Right.
where the assistant will come in, or why they would hire an event planner, depending on what their budget is.
Why would a small business want to do an event?
Well, there's a number of reasons. I mean, you can have a promotional event for your products or your services. Maybe you have a grand opening. Maybe you're reopening. Maybe you've got a new team member or a whole team coming in. There could be so many reasons. You might want to have a client appreciation event. Those are big ones for small and medium-sized businesses, because you want to make as you're growing your business, you want to make your clients feel really special, and events are a great way to do that and get everybody in to one area at one time. So it just maximizes your time and your energy.
Why would you? Okay, so like I like the idea of a client appreciation event. Would you charge for that, or would that be like a sales opportunity? What are your? And I know this isn't our content, but I'm interested in that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would not charge. I don't know if you could call it an appreciation event if you're going to charge your clients for coming to that event. This is for their business, to thank them, to make them feel special. Maybe there are people out there doing that. That is not my style. I would not recommend doing it. I would actually feel a little weird inviting someone to an appreciation event and then charging them. I think you really need to take care of the people who are supporting you. So
I went to a client appreciation event for the girl that I do like my retirement and my financial stuff with, and it was awesome, man. Like, it was like this whole dinner. There was definitely a presentation, but it was more of like a reminding you what I do presentation. There was no pitch. And she took pictures of everybody. It was phenomenal. In fact, I'm going to do a video on what it means to be a good salesperson. She came and sat next to me and my wife. She's like, let's get a picture. She like gets in, takes a picture. Then in like a week, I got that picture sent to me in the mail with a thank you card. Thank you for coming to my dinner. A picture of us, handwritten note, and then some business cards, brochures. And I was like, that's amazing business. That's how it's done.
That is how it's done. I agree. It's the soft sell. It's reminding you of why you're working there, but more importantly, it's building a relationship. Right?
Yeah, is it? Yeah, it's definitely. It's like saying, like, hey, we've been together for a year. I recognize that, And I think when I think of events, I largely think of like conferences and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that definitely happens a lot. Like I was working at a conference yesterday, and it was kind of their year-end conference with their top sellers, and that definitely happens. It was only about 35 people, so that you can have a smaller one, you can have a bigger one where there's hundreds of people or sometimes thousands. But there's so many different reasons and ways that you can throw events to show your appreciation for your clients and for your team as well. I think it's equally as important to give your team a shout out and show your appreciation for them.
I think those are all great ideas, and I have a ton of questions, but I'm going to shut up because you are the expert. And I know that you've prepared like a slide for us and some things to look at. So, and just to be transparent with the audience, Melanie and I have gone through this before, and the content was so good, we actually decided to reschedule and reshoot the interview, focusing on the highlights of it because it was just so much information. It would have blown you all away. So what we're going to do is we've kind of chunked down the highlights to that, And then I know that you've got a free offer at the end that you're going to show them how to get access to kind of like more in-depth material. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get into that at the end. It's just some free content that you can access, and then there's also some tools that I have available to you that can make your life a whole lot easier, but that we'll get into that at the end. But yeah,
awesome.
like you said, so we had so much information, so I'm really excited to do this again because I just wanted to condense it and really give you the highlights of really the 101, the basics of planning your event for your business, whether you're a small business or, as you discussed, Owen, medium or even large size businesses can take a lot of this and apply it to their events. So I am going to refer to my notes, so if you see me doing just a little scan, it's all good. I just want to make sure that you guys get the most out of this and have lots of takeaways. I am a big fan. I hate fluff. So I'm a big fan of giving you takeaways and action items and things that you can use today or next week for your event. So anyway, the purpose of the training is to, like I said, give you the tools so that you can run the events on your own or with your team. And I'm going to cover 3 main steps to planning the event. The first step is going to be determining your event objective and why that's important. Then we're going to get into how to choose the right venue for your event. And thirdly, we are going to talk about food and beverage and how that can make or break your event, because in my opinion, that is one of the most important aspects of planning any event.
Okay, right there. Why is that important? Because as a business owner, I'm thinking if cheese and crackers and grape juice and shut up, it's free food, right? Like, who are you to complain? But tell me why that thinking is wrong.
Because there's no wow factor in it. You know, anyone can go down to the store and get some cheese and crackers and some grape juice, but there's no wow factor in that. And if you are, since we've been talking about client appreciation events or even promotional events, you're inviting people to introduce them to you, or inviting them to remind them about what you do. You want to give them that wow factor. For me, it's all about making the people feel special. So food and beverage is the thing that everyone remembers. I mean, think about any event you've gone to, like a wedding, for example. I know this is kind of not in the business realm, but you go to a wedding, they're fairly standard formats for the most part. But what's the one thing you always remember? You either loved or hated the food.
Right.
The dancing might have been fun. You had a great time. You remember the booze and how much you drank. You remember what you ate.
Yeah.
The rest of it, you don't care about the table settings. The ceremony, you may remember 1 or 2 funny things. But, okay, it was funny, but you don't remember the details about it.
I can't even remember who got married.
But they had a great entree.
Yeah, exactly. But the hors d'oeuvres were fantastic.
Yeah, people will always remember the food.
That's great. Okay, so good. So 3 main steps.
Yes, so we're going to get into the event objective. So let's just get into this. So before you start getting into the logistical planning, you really want to know why you're even planning this event. This is going to save you a lot of wasted money, possible frustration, and a lot of scrambling during the event, which inevitably, especially if it's your first event or even your second or maybe third, scrambling does happen just because you're not used to necessarily figuring out and seeing what is going to happen. You really need to be projecting what's going to happen. So deciding on your event objective is like the who, what, where, when, and why. The who is you want to identify who is going to attend your event. Are you going to have organizers? Are you going to be organizing? You want to identify who will be planning the event for you and who's in charge of what aspects of it. Are you going to need sponsors, or will you need partners? And will clients be there? And if so, how many? Then the what part of the event objective is composed of a few different aspects. So some of those aspects are, is there going to be a name to your event? Do you need to have a name? Most events kind of do, and you probably do want to have one just to identify it. And what is the event about? So is it a car show? Is it a promotional event? Is it a festival? What is it going to be about? Then you also want to decide, think about your attendees. Do they have any obligations? So, for example, is there a dress code? Are they obligated to dress a certain way? You know, business casual can be very vague, and it's often used, especially in business settings. So try and be a little more generous with what business casual means. If you're not, you'll probably get a lot of emails. What does this mean? Or you might get some phone calls, or you'll get people showing up in a whole array of different types of clothing. So
yeah, you know what? I just went to an event, and I thought of the funniest video where, like, you know, day one, you know, guy comes out in like a three-piece suit, you know, he's like, I'm at my event, you know. And then day two, he's wearing a polo and khakis, and he's like, it's day two, you know what I mean? They already know me here. Day four, he comes out in PJs smoking a cigarette.
Nice.
You know, he's like, are we still here? Are we still here? You know, where's the food? I totally see that the dress code is interesting because I see like this happening at business casual events. It gets more and more casual.
Yeah, especially if they're over a few days, it does tend to happen. So just stating that and clearly stating it is a good idea. And then you also want to know, like, are your attendees going to need to pay? You know, so you want to clearly state that. So like we were talking earlier, you know, an appreciation event, chances are they're not going to need to pay. You don't necessarily need to put that on there. This is a free event. But if you are charging, then make sure you say, you know, ticket price, whatever, $25, $50, whatever it is for your event. Another important aspect of deciding what part of your objective is your theme. You want to identify whether or not there is going to be a theme, because this will play into the food that you decide on, the venue you decide on, the beverages. You know, you might want to have some like craft cocktails if you do have a theme, music, gifts, and decorations. Like everything will need to be thought of in a different way if you do have a specific theme. Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, do you know of any events that don't have a theme? Like, where would be a case where it's just kind of like a meet and greet? I mean, is there everything that I can think of? Well, maybe not networking events, but like, you know, like your general events, like there's always a theme. The NSA has like platform, you know, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Majority of events do have a theme, but they may or may not state it. Sometimes it's obvious whether or not it's in the title or the name of your event, you know, or you put it in the invitation. But, you know, there are a lot of events that they don't have a theme. Like, so if it's a meeting that you're having for your clients, then chances are you're not really going to have a theme around it.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, you don't have to be very specific about what they're wearing when they come to the event or the food. You know, it's a little more generic. So there are many. I would probably say less parties and more corporate meetings that you would need to think about in terms of the theme and determining whether or not there is going to be one. Another aspect of that is, what is your budget? You're going to want to identify right away what your budget is for the event. And always give yourself a little buffer on the end, because things are going to creep up that you didn't think of. And as long as you've given yourself that kind of the buffer, the contingency plan in it, so whether that's $1,000 or $100,000, depending on what the scope of your event is, make sure that you write something in so it accounts for all those unforeseen instances and unforeseen things that come up as you plan.
Now, an event planner is probably going to have that question built into their pitch, right, or to their presentation. Like, what is your budget? What is the budget you're working for or working with? And that's an important question, but what about the small business that doesn't know? We want to do an event, but how much should I spend? What are your thoughts on creating a budget?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's kind of a trial and error, to be honest. One of the things that you can do if you don't have an event budget is create a template of all the aspects of the event. I also have one on my event website. It's called the Event Toolkit. So you can do that if you want, but you can also create one in an Excel spreadsheet and then itemize everything, and then have somebody on your team go through and identify how much each of those are going to cost you. That'll give you an indication of how much the overall budget will be, and then you can decide whether or not it's a must-have, a nice-to-have, or definitely don't need. So
that's kind of what I thought you were going to say. Budgets for me are largely trial and error until you've done the same thing over and over and over again. You know what I mean?
Right. But again, if it's your first event, you really don't have any idea of how much it's going to cost you. Always put that buffer in and be generous with the buffer. You know, $10 as a buffer is not going to help anyone. So, you know, you might have
more like 10%.
I would do 10% just to be on the generous side.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so you're not panicking and, you know, sweating about it later, because you don't. It's just one of those things you don't need to worry about. So, and this next part in determining your event objective might seem obvious, but it's funny how many people forget to put it, especially on the invitation, is what's the date and what is the time of your event. So make sure that you know your target audience, and you kind of try and choose dates and times based around what's convenient for them. Now, I realize this isn't always possible, but you can remember that depending on the type of event, about 40% of people don't show up for events, even if they've RSVP'd. So just keep that in mind.
40% of invitees or 40% of RSVPs?
Invitees.
Okay.
Yeah. So they may have RSVP'd, but so if you've got 100 people on your invite list, 40% of those people won't be coming.
So what about, do you have a similar number for RSVPs? Like what amount of RSVPs actually don't come?
It does depend on the type of event that you're planning, but if you're looking at more like business style events, since that's what we're talking about, it can be anywhere between 20 to another 40%. There's a few things that you wanted to keep in mind. One of those things is weather. Even if you're having an indoor event, if they're in an area where there's snow or anything like maybe even a tornado, something that extreme, obviously that's going to affect your event. So there's a lot of different variables. The time will also affect your event. You know, if you have a cocktail reception right after work, say on a Wednesday or a Thursday, but you're not starting it until 8 o'clock at night, most people will be either gone home or gone out for dinner at that point. So you want to really watch kind of the details when you're planning in terms of getting the most people to your event.
Do you have any thoughts on the best time to plan an event with relationship to a holiday or a weekend?
Yeah, don't plan it around the holiday or the weekend of a holiday. So don't plan an event on a Thursday of a long weekend or a holiday weekend. You want to really be aware of what's going on around you. In terms of the calendar, because if there is, if there are any types of holidays, they are going to affect, or it's likely that they will affect the attendance. Again, that does really depend on what type of business you're in and what the type of event is. If you're throwing a party on a Thursday of a holiday, it may actually go really well. But if you're planning a meeting, probably not as well.
I think, yeah, you know what, and I don't necessarily have any data to support. Well, I guess I do, because I just got back from an event, right? So when we're recording this, American Thanksgiving was Thursday, and then we had Friday off, and then Saturday and Sunday, and then I went to an event on Monday, and it was kind of like perfect, because I'm like holiday hungover, you know what I mean? Like just from all the friends and the candy and everything, and that's kind of what I mean by hungover. Let me just clarify that. Not that I wasn't drinking beer, but that's not what I'm saying. But you're like, oh, I gotta hit the grind on Monday, and then it's like, oh, I have an event,
Right.
Great, I was stoked to go to a 2-day event after a holiday weekend. That was a perfect fit to way to come back into reality.
Right, and get yourself back into the routine of working. It can definitely work. I'd be interested. Was it a paid event, Owen?
Yeah, I paid $97 for it.
Yeah, that's why. So if it was a free event, I guarantee most of those people would not have shown up.
There would have been a different thinking.
Absolutely different, yeah. But because there is a fee associated with it, they paid it. They're like, oh well, I might as well go.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I don't know if that's in your presentation, but I'd love to talk about a little bit between a paid and a free event and sort of the data. Because I think it's like, well, I want to make it a free event so that everybody comes, but the thinking on that is like, well, there's no perceived value on it now.
Well, and there's no commitment. I mean, again, it depends on if you're throwing an appreciation event, don't charge your clients. Really, do something fun for them, make them want to come. You may even want to invite their families, their wife or their kids, or their husband, whoever it is, and so that's really an event for them as well.
Yeah.
And that way it's easier for them, especially if they have family obligations that might prohibit them from coming in the evenings, weekends. That will make it a lot easier. You know, like like a picnic on a Sunday is a great, or a Saturday is a great idea, right? And then you can have their whole family there. Whereas with a paid event, you have that commitment. You have that, like you said, perceived value. But you need to step up in that case as well and provide
more content or value or whatever.
Yeah. They want to make sure, you want to make sure that they've got their money's worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I think in my opinion, it just goes back to fluff versus giving them content. And
right.
Yeah. So, I'd rather everybody walk out giving them a little more information and going, wow, than walking out and being like, oh, that was kind of crap. I didn't get anything new.
Yeah, I want to come out of an event pumped up like I am right now. Like I'm super pumped up on the event and kind of, I've actually been to this event before, but this was kind of, it's like you just need to be at the right place at the right time to hear things the right way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the beauty in annual events, social media events, content marketing events, podcasting events is you might have heard all this stuff before, but there's that one time that you go where you're ready to accept what you're hearing.
Exactly. That's why, when I go to events myself, I always go in with the intention of learning one new thing each day. And if I learn anything else, then that's great. It's
bonus.
Bonus. But if I can take one major nugget away from each day, then it's well worth my time and money spent.
So do all those things, dates and times, the themes, the defining the attire and expectations, do all those go under event objective?
That's all your event objective, yeah, because that all helps you determine the objective itself, or why the event is actually taking place.
Right.
So the why is your event objective or your purpose for the event. So you want to always kind of keep in mind from the perspective of your client or your clients who are coming, they're always going to ask, what's in it for me? Like, why do I want to attend your event? So just keep that in mind. When you're planning anything. But before you get into any of the logistical planning, just sit down and go through your event objective, again, the who, what, where, when, and why, and that will really help you identify the next pieces in terms of determining your venue, which we're going to talk about in a second, the food and beverage, and then all the other pieces that go with event planning, which we're not going to get into today because there's a lot of content that we could probably do a whole series on. But it will help you identify all the other pieces that you need to do in order to plan your event successfully.
Well, I'm excited about the venue thing because venue is so important. If you choose the wrong venue, it'll affect your entire brand.
Absolutely it will, yes. And one of the biggest struggles with choosing the right venue is that there's two things. People they don't know the right questions to ask, and they also don't get started soon enough. So venue is one of the most important things to do at the beginning, especially if you want a very specific venue, because if you're planning something where you really want to showcase your brand and who you are and who your company is, then you're going to want a really special place, and it can be a unique place. I actually have a blog post about unique venues, and so you can make it really special and fun, but again, it all goes into things like the theme and the objective of your event. So you need to keep those things in mind before you decide on the venue.
And your brand, for example, I'm planning a one-day event on YouTube and video marketing, and I'm looking at different places to have it. I want to have it at a non-hotel, non-meeting place, something a little non-traditional, because I'm a very non-traditional guy, right? I'm wearing a Han Solo shirt, and I wear bandanas and half the stuff that I do. But
I love it.
At the same time, it needs to be professional, because when it comes down to it, I'm all business, and I want results and things like that. So you choose a place that has like loud flushing toilets. It kills it, and that stuff happens. That stuff happens. I've actually gone to venues where I tell the person, well, I want to come on a Friday and just listen, because I know other events are happening, and I want to know how loud is it going to be in this room if they're playing bongo drums next door. Stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. And I have a tip to go with that. I'm going to add on to that in just a minute so that you can avoid a lot of that stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's get into. I've got a quick checklist for how to determine or how to decide on the perfect event venue for you. So there are, let's see, 3, 4, 5 points to this. So the first one is who's your target audience and what's the guest list size. So again, just going back to, are you going to invite clients? Who's the event for, and how many people are going to be there? Now, I know I said earlier that 40% of people typically don't show up for your event, but you actually want to take into consideration that they may all show up, because the last thing you want to do is have a venue that can accommodate 100 people and you've invited 200 and 150 or 200 people show up and you have to turn them away. This actually happened to me a few weeks ago at a conference. It was shocking to me.
Wow, you got turned away, or you helped? Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I mean, my bad, because I registered late, but they still took my registration.
Yeah, they took it.
Yeah, they still took my registration, and I will say it was a free event, but I was like, me and 100 other people were turned away. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, and you know what? Some people might not be out there thinking, oh, well, that makes the brand more desirable, and maybe it does. For me, it's a huge indication of being unprofessional. You don't respect my time. You don't respect my effort. All those things. I'll tell you what. Waste my money. Take my money and throw it away. But waste my time, and you're going to have a problem on your hands.
Yeah, well, and that kind of did happen for me, because I live in downtown Toronto, so I no longer have a car. I just rent them when I need them. It's like living in New York, right? Nobody has a car, because it's more hassle than it's worth. And so I did go rent a car. It was 2 suburbs away, which when you live downtown is a big deal.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I made a whole day of this, and then I was like,
wasted.
It was wasted. I was like, okay, what do I have to learn from this? But at the same time,
good attitude.
Yeah.
So who is the audience and the size of the audience are important factors. What else?
Absolutely. So here's a tip for you. So if you have an event venue that's too big for your event, if you're in a hotel, use a hotel partition or even a decorative partition to recreate the space so it doesn't feel empty or overwhelming. And make sure that if your event is invite only, request that your attendees RSVP by clearly printing it on the invitation, and give them a deadline. Always give them a deadline, because if they just see RSVP, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's going to go in a pile on their desk or at home on their counter, and they'll forget about it.
Yeah.
So make sure you give them a deadline, and then be prepared to follow up with people. So, that may be through social media, that may be through emails, or even phone calls in some cases, just saying, hey, are you planning an event? Just a reminder, just a friendly phone call to get their RSVP and find out. It's really important, especially when we get into not just the venue size, but into food and beverage. But we'll get into that in a second. And here is a tip. So to increase your attendance rates, always remind them about the event the week before the event, then a few days before, and then on the day of the event. And those are for people who've RSVP'd, not for everyone, because the last thing, if someone's RSVP'd the last thing they want to see are all these emails and reminders coming in. So,
right.
Yeah, so I would definitely do that. Number 2 is it going to be convenient for your guests? Now, I know I mentioned this, the proximity and the location. Again, it's not always conducive to your city or to your town or even the event itself, but just try and keep it in mind, because if you're planning a meeting maybe down in the downtown core with people who work in the downtown core, then it's a good idea to just keep it local. Or if you're in the suburbs, try and keep it simple for people is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that alcohol consumption. The reason I bring this up is because in some places it is mandatory that you have insurance and or taxis for your guests if you're serving alcohol. So you really want to check with your local insurance agent or agency rather, to find out what kind of insurance you need if you're going to be serving alcohol, or actually even if you're having an event, I would check, because in many places, if you're having an event, you do need the insurance. But also what kind of steps you need to take if you are going to be serving alcohol.
And let me add to that, Okay, I don't know if how those rules might change from city to county and municipality in the United States, but I will say this: having cabs or having like Uber ready for your guests, even contacting an Uber rep, which is what one of in my town's a big brewery town. There's lots of breweries all over the place, and a lot of these places are kind of like hidden in the back hills and whatnot because they need big spaces.
Right.
But a lot of these breweries got together with Uber and made a discount program. Yeah. So getting together with Uber and saying, hey, can we do a promotion for this night? To encourage, number one, Uber use because it's still kind of growing, but also to just show your guests you went the extra mile, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or your clients, whatever the case might be, bringing it up to your client.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, it just makes it really simple for you and it makes it really simple for your clients. And I think that is a great idea to go to a local business and do a promotion, a joint promotion. And it looks so good, especially if you use, like a car service. And, you've got all these black sedans parked out waiting. And it also creates buzz. If you're having a promotional event, that creates buzz to, like, people walking down the street going, like, what's happening in there and who's throwing it, so if you have like a banner or any sort of promotional stuff identifying your company outside the venue, that's going to look really good and people will be like, hey, I'm going to go home and check, or I'm going to check on my phone what that company's about.
Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so I think that's a really good point, Owen. The next thing I want to know is about the venue knowledge and expertise. It's one thing when you go into a hotel, you kind of trust that they know what they're doing because they do. Most hotels tend to plan a lot of events. But you might want to even just ask them for a list of references. You may want to see pictures of events that they've planned in the past so that you can see different layout options. And you also might want to even just take some time and talk to the staff that are going to be at the event. Sometimes people, again, depending on the type of event that you're planning and the scope of it and the theme and everything, a few things that you might want to know are, can they work overtime? Will they work overtime? Right. Some can and cannot, depending on if they're in a union or not. So those are just little things, what can you put decorations up? In many venues, not just hotels, they don't allow you to put anything on the walls. Because people will go and they'll nail something in, and then they've got holes in their walls, or they've got the paint in. Just going, and also like, what kind of uniform are the staff going to be wearing? Are they friendly? That's the biggest thing. When dealing with the staff, how do they present themselves? Are they going to be representative of you and your brand? So.
Can I jump in there on something? I went to a banquet for a nonprofit. We do a lot of their video work, and so we're invited to the banquet every year. Yeah. And we got there on time. We were not early. We got there on time, and there's an hour of networking. So we're out there doing the silent auction, and we're out there. We're kind of like finding our table, and this dude is coming across the dining hall, and he's buttoning up. He's wearing an undershirt, but he's buttoning up his shirt. And his sleeves are open, his tie is hanging down, and I thought, is that like the MC because, or is that like a guest? Because a waiter would never, a respectable waiter in a hotel like this would never walk across the floor like that.
Yeah.
Well, I asked him later on. I was like, so you guys work for the hotel? And he says, no, we're an outsourced company. You know. Same thing with the bartender. I went to the bartender and got a drink, and I was just like, so how you doing, Sam? And he's like, what do you mean?
Deadpan. You're like, hello.
Oh yeah, and he's just kind of like, in his mind, I felt like he was going through I'm not supposed to talk to you unless I'm tipped, right? Or something. But there wasn't like this, I'm well, sir, hope you enjoy your evening. That's what I expect. So for anyone watching this that's thinking, the wait staff, how is that important? That is super important. And I told the ED, hey, you guys got to check on the wait staff next time because these guys were amateurs at best.
Absolutely. Well, they're the ones who are going to be dealing with your clients, not the venue manager or the event manager at the venue.
Right.
They'll be dealing with you.
It's a great point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and here's a tip I have for you. Depending on what your budget is, if it's something that you can work into it, I would narrow down your event choices to two, maybe even three options, and then I would go and I'd be a staying guest there. So if you're going to a hotel and having an event there, go and reserve a room for a night or two. Go and use, like, what's it like to check in? What's it like to go from the lobby to my room? Who greets me? What's concierge like? What kind of advice do they give?
Right.
Call room service. What are they like? Go and, like you said earlier, you went and sat in on an event. Go and do that kind of stuff. Actually experience it. Maybe don't tell the hotel that's what you're doing, because if they know that you're checking them out to, as a prospective client, they might treat you a little differently. But just kind of, go incognito. But I love doing that because you really get a true feel for what the venue and what a hotel is like, and what they're going to, what your guests are going to experience.
Awesome.
Yeah. And the next thing, before we move on to the next step, is when you're thinking about your venue knowledge and even experience, one other tip that you'll want to do is make sure that you also walk around the outside of the venue. This is equally as important as being on the inside, because there could be things like construction, which would, could affect the noise quality right inside the venue. Excuse me. You might want to know where the neighbors are located. Again, if you can do any promotional stuff outside the venue, if decorating is required or even permitted, any sort of possible hazards. And also you're going to want to know fire exits and drop-off and parking spots. So all that kind of information is really valuable.
And smoking.
Yeah, when your guests arrive, and just to troubleshoot as well as you move on. So the last 2 points when determining the best venue for your event are, what other services does the venue provide? Do they have, where is the parking, if they have any? If they don't, what happens? You kind of want to know those things before you, so you don't have any surprises. And also you want to know so that there's no extra expenses on your account, right? So you want to know if these things are included. Parking, again, depending on the type of venue that you're going to, may or may not be included. Often you can ask for it, or you can ask for it at a discounted rate. Is security on site if it's needed? Electricity sometimes, like they're in those big ballrooms, if you're having a large event, sometimes it's hard to find electrical outlets. So are you going to need their AV team to come in and kind of set you up so you have some sort of electricity so people can plug their phones in or their iPads in to recharge it?
That's a great point, especially for like long day events. Like I just got back from an event where they actually said it was in the whole thing is that we're discouraging laptop use.
Right.
Now the whole thing was like, we want you to be present at the event and not taking notes. Like she's like, we're giving you a workbook. There's your notes.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. What I have a problem with is when there's nowhere to plug my laptop in. And there isn't kind of this ban on laptops.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, there's a table in front of you, but then there's nowhere to plug in. Or there's 3 plugs per little area, Yeah,
absolutely. And, setting up a charging station is so easy, and it's just a value-added piece for the entire event. And I don't care what kind of event it is, because everybody is tapped into technology these days, and we're attached to it. And so even if you're not allowing technology at the actual event, or laptops or iPads or whatever it is, people still need their phones at some point, even if it's on the break. So it's not difficult to do. It's just finding out where is it available, how is it available, and making it work.
I saw it was on Shark Tank, and there was they had like a charging station. And I love Shark Tank, but sometimes I feel like these guys are so millionaires. They're such huge millionaires that they're disconnected from the common person. Yeah. Because this guy had like a charging station for rent. It was like $125 an hour or something super affordable, and they're like, oh, but this and oh, but that, and nobody would ever use it. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I would love to be able to put my phone down in even a semi-secured area, because I'm not really that worried about somebody at a business event stealing my phone.
Yeah.
I'm just not that worried about it. And if they had a fingerprint scanner and all that kind of stuff, like you couldn't. having a charging station at an event that I go to, I will be tweeting you and talking you up on social because I love when my needs are taken care of. And having a charged phone is a need. I don't want to carry a charging stick in my pocket. It burns my leg, you know, like it gets all hot in there, you know.
Well, people not only that, but you know, they can get bulky or whatever, but people forget them, leave them somewhere, they lose them, you know. Just like having a charging station, and I don't care how small the event is, having one there available, or having, you know, you don't even have to have a specific station if you have like 25 people in the room, but you have the chargers available for them. And maybe you have the chargers, you know, have a tag on them so they're identified that they're yours, so nobody accidentally takes them with them, because that can happen. It's like a pen, you know, you give someone a pen, they're just not thinking. It happens. But, you know, there's just ways of adding to the wow factor that are so small that make a huge impact. Yeah,
I agree. That's awesome. So that was other services, right? That was number 4.
Yeah, so that's, well, that was kind of like, are you going to be charged for that kind of stuff? You know, like, because sometimes you can be, because it's the pieces that attach to the electricity, you know, that the AV has to go get, and they essentially rent it to you.
Right.
So, so then, you know, getting into like the fees, we were just that's actually a perfect segue, because I was just about to talk about the fees. You don't only want to know what's included, but you want to ask them what is not included. And I think that is a really important question, because there may be things that you haven't thought about, that they'll be like, oh, well, XYZ is not included. You're like, oh, but we actually need those things.
Right.
And you're not showing up. So ask them, you know, you want to know what's included, but equally as important, you want to know what is not included. And then, you know, obvious things like, what is the price for the actual venue? Are you going to need hotel rooms? What are those prices if you do need them? Any extras, AV, those are always extras. You know, we'll get into the food and beverage in a second. Internet is often, if you're going to have Wi-Fi available in the room, is often an extra charge. So just making sure that those things are taken care of. You can even ask the venue for a price list of what they have available, so, and you can use that kind of as your checklist of, do I need this, do I not need this? And just, you know, bartending fees, corkage fees, any of those kind of things that that may or may not be applicable for your event.
Awesome.
Yeah. So moving on, we're going to get into the third of the steps, and this is food and beverage. Like I said, one of the most important pieces of your event. Do not cheap out on your food and beverage. It's super easy to do that. Just don't. That's all I'll say about it. And you know, so obviously one of the most common questions is, how much are you going to need to satisfy your guests? And I'm just going to share a quick slide here with you guys, if that's all right, because this will make it really easy. You can use it over and over again, and I've given credit to the people I have borrowed this from. So let me know when you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Perfect.
All right. So there's this one, and then there's the next one. Just take a quick screenshot of this, because this will give you a really good guideline for how much food you're going to need for your event. This first slide is appetizers, beverages, and breakfast. So I'll just give you like not even 3 seconds to do that. And then the next one is lunch, dinner, and desserts. So you can have a really good indication based on your numbers of how much food you need to order. And again, this was props to caterista.com for throwing this out there online.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that makes it really easy. And whoops, sorry, I'll get back to.
No problem. I'll cut to me real fast. And the reason why I love that is because those are some of the details that I get hung up on, like how much coffee do I need? You know? I love coffee. I'll drink coffee. I actually go to a grocery store that serves free coffee and walk around if I just need some energy throughout the day. But not everybody drinks coffee, so having that chart I think is really helpful to know kind of what your proportions are and what you should be planning for at least. And like a budget, it's like, well, now you know for next time, hey, this group didn't eat a ton of food, or that appetizer didn't play well. Have you ever seen something like that where the appetizer just wasn't touched, it just didn't play well with the audience?
Oh, absolutely, and it happens all the time. So one of the points I was actually going to make was specifically to that is work with your caterer or the food and beverage manager on site, because they know what sells. So if they have, you know, a few hot items, or they have some signature items that are really popular, order more of those. You know, they turn out a lot of people and a lot of food, so they're experienced in this. And if this is not your forte, or you don't have a lot of experience with it, then absolutely use them, because that's what they're there for. You know, work with and share your budget with them. You know, I've done many events where you go to, say, a hotel, their fees can be astronomical, and you're like, oh my God, this is like way over my budget. But what you can do is just say, hey, here's what our budget is. Can you work within this? And how can we work within this? And see what they come back with, and then do it kind of as a negotiation. You know, it's like the venue and with the food and beverage. Always negotiate. I never ever pay top dollar, or what we call rack rates, because there's always room for negotiation. And sometimes, especially if you're using a hotel, you know, the food and beverage is a little harder to negotiate on, whereas the venue is a little easier. You know, you can negotiate things in like, okay, well, we'll spend X amount of dollars on our food and beverage in return for the venue, or in return for a reduced rate on the venue, or, you know, maybe we want a conference room or a meeting room outside of the actual conference room to use for our VIPs. There's so many things that you can negotiate, but always negotiate with the food and beverage managers.
Do you have to use the hotel's catering?
Mostly, yes. So you need to check that. Almost every hotel, you will have to use their catering. If you are using an outside venue that is not a hotel, they often have preferred caterers. So that needs to be a discussion that you have with their team. Even things as little as, like, you think, okay, well, I'll bring in a cake. You know, maybe it's a birthday cake because you're having a celebration for somebody, or you just want to acknowledge them at the event. Well, you can't do that in many locations. So you have to really be aware, and sometimes I like to just do it and then ask for forgiveness later. But
I was just gonna say something like that.
Yeah. So, but just, you know, it's better to know, and then just kind of.
Yeah, right. Because otherwise, you're gonna pay like $8 a cake slice, you know, a slicing fee or whatever, a corkage fee, and some of those things. And you know, sometimes it might just be better to just have it dropped off and deal with what happens next. And I'll tell you what, you have a good event. It's like anything, right? The event, the hotel, they want you to have a good time. They want you to come back. And, you know, I mean, in my experience, maybe you can correct me on this, but a hotel event planner, or like the concierge, your contact there, is not a career person, right? They're going to be there for 5 years, and they're going to move on to somewhere else. So while they're there, they want to have as best of a track record as possible. So they don't want to be known for getting in fights with people that booked out 3 rooms, you know, over a cake. You know what I mean? They're going to say, hey.
Yeah, no, they're super accommodating. You know, like this, I just did an event yesterday for a client I've been working with on and off every once in a while. I didn't actually plan this event, and this is why I'm bringing it up, because it was a bit of a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
But I was the on-site person, so they asked me. They're from Florida. They were doing an event in Toronto. They're like, we have everything planned. Can you just go on site and make sure it's all executed? I was like, great, yeah, no problem. I get there, and the boxes were not correct. You know, the stuff that they shipped me was not correct. Apparently, once the host of the event got there, he's like, this is not the right food. They didn't order enough food. You know, so there was just like, it was like a comedy of errors, and so I just took over. I didn't tell the host. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like
step into it,
and step into it and get this done, because otherwise, you know, it was actually a really fairly short meeting. It was like 4 hours. It was a lunch meeting, but the food's important, and in a hotel, you cannot just be like 10 minutes later, like, oh, we need a buffet, or we need a hot served meal for 30 people. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
And most people don't realize. They're like, you know, I don't care. I said I want this done, and I want it done. Well, you need to work with their team a little bit and be really reasonable. But, you know, because normally their food and beverage team is going to want your numbers confirmed 48, even 72 hours before, sometimes even more, depending on the venue. So So you really need to be aware of those kinds of things when you're planning your food and beverages, and making sure that everything is correct, and going and working with their team, because their team is there. The venue, food and beverage caterers, they're there to help you. They're not going to be confrontational, you know, and if you work with them, they'll work with you.
Yeah.
It's like anyone.
And you know, that's huge, because events are big. You know, I plan my events. I'm already booked for 2 events, 3 events for next year. Yeah. I've already bought tickets. You know, I haven't done airline yet, but the tickets are purchased. You know what I mean? And so they're already on my calendar. And Michael Hyatt, who's like he's CEO, leadership coach, podcasting guy, really, really great content. We talked about him a little bit on the interview with Tyler, but he talks about how every year he makes a plan for his events. What events is he going to go to? And kind of when we're in that small, growing, 6-figure business level, like, events are like the biggest thing for me to grow my business. I went to one event my first year in business, and then the people that I met from that event actually ended up being my biggest clients for the next year. So I am a big believer in events, right? Yeah. And it may not always be a big, you know, social media conference. It might be a one-day event, right, which is a great lead gen. And so having these tools under your belt, I think, are essential, not just for executing an event, but knowing how to hire an event planner, or at least like an assistant to help you plan this event. And that's what your company does, right? Like, your company is about training event planners and soon-to-be small businesses in how to host better events. That's what you do, right?
We actually, we don't do as much about the event planning side of it as we do about the business side. So it's like, how do you get paying clients? How do you market yourself? How do you brand yourself? How do you get your business started so it's profitable? That's more our side. I can definitely obviously talk about the event side of it, but I personally love business and helping people kind of achieve their dreams and their goals. And because of my background in events, I decided to take that angle of the business side of it more than the event side.
Oh, that's even better, because okay, so the event planners that you're and I knew this, you just had to remind me of it. Your main client is like small businesses starting event planning companies.
Exactly. Yes.
Fantastic.
That's exactly. Yeah.
So how do we stay in touch with you and get in touch with you? You said you had an ebook or an offer for our audience, because we're kind of running low on time. How do we stay in touch with you and learn more about you and the content that you're providing to help businesses grow?
Yeah, so you can head on over to eventplanningblueprint.com, sign up for my free weekly advice, and you'll also get the 5 critical marketing strategies to marketing your event as an instant download, so that's free. The other thing that I would suggest, especially if you're really just like getting started out in event planning, and you know, we were talking about the budget earlier, how do you set up a budget? We're talking about a lot of like checklist kind of items. I have all that already done in a package. It's called the Event Toolkit. It's under products. I would really recommend buying that one, because it's also got an ebook in there which will explain a lot of the stuff I've just gone through. It's up to you. You can go and, you know, set up your own budget, but it's all there. It's super easy. It's done for you. It's instant download, and you can just get started and get.
So you've got some products and stuff on your website as well that they can take a look at.
Absolutely, they're all there.
Very cool. And you got a great YouTube channel. I think it's Event Planning Blueprint TV, right?
Yep, that's it.
Great YouTube channel. She delivers weekly content, and you and I even have a collaboration kind of in the works that'll be coming out pretty soon, because I don't do a lot of events. It's mind-numbing to me. It's so much work to me. But I work with people that do events, and we use a lot of video to increase our attendance rate, or at least our RSVPs, because when you RSVP, you're at least on my email list now. And now I can continue to market to you over and over again. So, Melanie, thank you for joining us today and sharing this knowledge with you. Really just a ton of information. It was a power-packed episode today, so thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning in to the Small Business Success Summit. Again, watching another one of our great trainings where we're bringing in a variety of content from lots of different fields to help you run a well-rounded business that will grow and scale and get you to that point where you want to be. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on the Small Business Success Summit. Take care.
Thanks, Owen.